I swear this place is like the Bermuda Triangle. Hey folks, welcome back. Today we've got some jobs to do. We're going to sort out a few bits here, a bit of cladding to do, but the most important thing is the big topic. Right, first job of the day is we're going to try and chicken proof and rabbit proof, or at least chicken proof these gates. We preferred the wooden gates for the look, but obviously they've got gaps in them, so we're going to sort that. We were going to go the weld mesh route, but it was a bit expensive and we've got loads of this stuff anyway. We only really need to mesh half of it. Like the bottom half, but unfortunately these aren't quite enough to get two out of each. But Joe's gone to layer up. Autumn is finally here. We've decided on what height we're going to cut these. So the plan is to get these fixed on, and I might use some extra battening just so they're not relying on staples. And this might only last 10 years. It's kind of that PVC coated wire, but we've used it loads in the past around chicken runs. It's actually pretty good stuff. And it's kind of stiff today, so it holds itself up. Oh, I think this is working okay. I've got them for the smallest staples I could, well, not the smallest, but fairly small ones. I just don't want to go splitting these nice timber gates, which is why I'm half tempted to just tack it in for now. And then with some short sections of like small batten, I could just clamp it in might be a bit neater. Right, so for those of you who don't know, next year we're going to be starting the conversion of that cowshed behind us. And there's a whole load of decision making that has to go into that, not just the design, but everything from how we deal with sewage through to what roof we use. But all that decision making has, well, we have our own like points of view on things, but also there's this like whole bigger picture, which is how housing's going. And one of those things is how you power a house, and whether it's going to be on-grid, off-grid, eco, carbon neutral, and all that stuff. So we've got a few things on our side, and one of those is the fact that we've got power and water here already. We don't have drainage, but that's okay. Well, we don't have main sewage, I should say. What we do have is a great big roof to work with, so solar is obviously an option, but there seems to be like, would you say it's a fashionable thing to say off-grid?
It's becoming more popular, people looking into it.
Yeah, and I just wonder whether there's a lot of situations where people are pushing to go off-grid when really it's probably not the most sensible thing to do. It's a bit like our old house. Some of you may remember we decided to go on a biomass system because we had an old oil boiler. We swapped that.
Bad times.
Joe can give some positive,
watch
some
those videos.
real
They
life
are
feedback
hideous.
on biomass boilers. But that was a prime example of, we had a gas mains 5 metres away from our house. We didn't need to be off-grid. Obviously we went for an off-grid setup, but that was more just looking
Oil's
at...
technically off-grid.
It is, yeah, it saves LPG.
But then you're still reliant on someone to come and put your oil in.
Well, that's another talking point. Why are you off-grid? Are you off-grid because... Well, yeah, that's kind of what we were saying already, but you're still reliant on... You can be off-grid, like you say, but still be using oil and gas.
Yeah.
I mean, everyone around here is off-grid for their heating. There's no gas. Any more of those staples, huh? So as far as where we are with it all, we've got our approved plan, which is something, but it's not everything. So we have got more stuff going on in the background. We'll hopefully be able to update on that soon. But those will, if we're doing a full lap, for example, it means we can put solar. Like I said, because it's a good, decent sized roof, that'll help us.
Ow! poor use, to be fair. It was my fault, but I'm back on. Go
I
on.
like how so many people noticed my nail varnish in the last video, the tractor one.
How? What were you doing without shoes
Well,
on?
the girls had painted nail varnish on my thumb,
Oh,
and I
on
was trying to
on
work
your
out
thumb. I thought it
what
was
one
your
of the holes
toenails.
was for in the roll bar, and said, "So that's so you can hang your nail polish back on."
And you do have it on your... I thought you meant your toenails because you got it on there.
Hey, don't give away. Don't tell everyone the secret.
In fact, in bed this morning, he's like, look at us with our matching toenails. Because I'd let the girls do mine as well.
Yeah.
But, oh, well. That's what part of being a good daddy to girls is all about. I hope you take out all my sniffing.
That said, we don't really open this side up that much.
You know, it'd be really good to ask what channels. Do anyone know any good channels which like give
Self-build.
good detail of self-build?
Because Grand Designs is
Self-build.
absolutely terrible.
Well, it's not
But
terrible.
for factual.
It's just obviously they've got to try and get like
Oh, I know.
3 or 4 years work into an hour.
I don't mean it's terrible. I just mean from an information point of view.
Yeah.
We watched 2 episodes this week, and they didn't even say how the buildings were insulated.
We were trying to
or
watch,
heated.
weren't we?
Yeah, and you kind of pause, and you're like, have they used SIPs? Have they blown it in? It's odd how their priorities are just so
Well, it's a
biased
different
towards
kind
design.
of.
I know, but I would have thought that's probably in this day and age
Yeah.
one of the most
Well,
important
I mean, I
things.
think they do when it's like a passive house. That's all they talk about, you know.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
But
We don't watch enough of them, to be honest.
yeah. But any good Grand Designs you recommend? Like, have you seen any that are of what we're doing?
Big cavernous barn conversions. Well, I
Or
would
dairy
actually ask if anyone is watching other big self-builds or barn conversions, what other channels are going out there. We know a few, and we are in touch with a few. And actually, some of the best are just very, very small accounts on Instagram where people are just sharing their day-to-day build. They're not, producing YouTube videos or anything, but they're sharing all the nitty-gritty in Instagram posts, so they're great.
How much of Tim crying do you want to witness over the next few years?
Crying? A little bit of emotion.
Things are going wrong.
Right, I'm not going to hammer it all the way home, just because it's not going anywhere. We'll try this for now, and if the goats are in here and they wrecked it, then it's not the end of the world. Right, I'd like to say they're chicken proof now, but well, we've already got chickens across enemy line, so we'll have to leave them open or leave one of them open for the rest of the day. This girl's fretting that she can't get to her mates, and she probably could if she thought about it. Now look, I don't mind chickens strutting around the yard, but when all of them come up, and that's kind of 12, 15 of them, we've got another 10 or so on the way, it just gets a bit messy, and they're in the pecking holes in bags and things. So yeah, it's not the end of the world, but I might just put an extra rail there. That, not this side because they slope up those rails, but that side I think I was going to make it into a bit of a style. Anyway, that's for another day. So last little bit on the gates to sort is where this drop bolt goes down, because obviously we've got a pair. This one stays closed most of the time, but at the moment this is just sat in the gravel and it doesn't really stay secure. So I'm going to dig out a little bit here, shutter in some concrete, and then get a hole ready for that drop bolt to fit down into. Here's a little example of when things go wrong. I couldn't use a big field latch like I've got on all the other gates because it would be too wide for here and it was just too clunky. So I've got this smallish one, which is fine and it works absolutely spot on. But I think a couple of people might mention it in their comments. Even though I'd upgraded these screws to sort of 40mm ones, they need to be bigger. I'm going to see if I can find like a little coach bolt, quite small ones, and get that in there. Because what happens is when somebody has left the gate open on a windy day, as that flies in, if this gate is secure, it's obviously swinging through at such a pace that it just snapped it out, or it just pulled one out, so I took both out. I don't think there's any other option other than if I wanted to put a kind of a little timber block or plate on the back of this one, that would work, because then this would stop against it. but then if it stops against there before this catch catches down, then obviously the gate won't hold shut. So I think we're going to stick with this idea because it's quite nice. I can drive through and just swing it shut from the truck window, and then when I get back up, I can put this across so I know that everything's secure. All right, let's get a spade, start digging. I swear this place is like the Bermuda Triangle. Things just go missing. So this is what we've got to dig our hole with. It's just infuriating. Anyway, we don't need to go deep. No one ever. Oh, what were you doing, Timothy? Okay, it's okay. We're going to work with it. But there was a day when I would have probably said that was a jewellery box and gave it to my mum as a gift. So I'm kind of happy where this is now. I'll go off volume because I might have lost a little bit of this in the builder's merchant car park. So it's probably 5 half buckets, so we only really need just over half cement. That's a bit of straw, organic concrete. Right, we don't want to put too much water in this, we want it nice and strong. And that last slosh was unnecessary, Tim. Be like soup now. Right, I think we're there. For our next hack job of the day, it's a cedar troweling. Well, there we go, nothing fancy. If I can, I'll try and find, I've got an edging trowel which will give a bullnose sort of round to it, which just hopefully might mean that the edges of this won't break. If they're a sharp corner, there's more chance that any vehicle or anything that goes over it could snap off those edges. But the idea is to bring this aggregate up to the top of it anyway. Right, job done. Hopefully it's going to remain dry enough now and get back on that cladding. Oh, the cladding, it never ends. At this point it is super tempting to just drop it in wet, make the hole rather than drilling it out. That might actually mean that there's going to be less chance of this. If I get a big SDS drill in there in a week's time or whatever, there's still a chance it might loosen up the concrete. I could now just drop it in. I think I might experiment. To do that though, I need to make sure that the gates are perfectly parallel or linear with each other, which is why I had a string line to set the gates out originally. But I'm just going to, I can eye it up, I think. Yeah, so they need to go out a bit. I'm going to pull it back out again, but I think that was worth doing. So what that's done is I almost made a pilot. So when we drill it, we're only going to be enlarging that hole by a couple of mil. That's good. Right, I'm around the back now, and as you can see, I've managed to get halfway. and this has just been sold as drawing. No one can see this. I'm doing it for very little reward. It's not really changing the appearance of the cabin at all. This wall, the prevailing wind, this barely even saw rain ever. So, I mean, part of me thinks I could have just used some reefing sheets or something, but at the end of the day, at some point, this cabin will be moved, will be sited somewhere, and at that point, someone else might have the view of this site at the end of the cabin. So it had to be done, but let me show you what it's looking like. So I think we've worked through the cedar and we're onto larch now, but most of this will really appear the same. Give it a year, I guess, this will all silver down. So rough sawn boards, exactly the same as the other end. These are 25mm probably, apart from the little bit of waney edge there. There we go. So 25mm boards, and what does that mean? Well, it means that this wall is getting really heavy. This could have been a lot simpler and a lot lighter, but I was paying £2.90, I think these boards worked out. So, you know, I'm in less than 100 quid to do the whole wall. So there's a bit of a payoff there. I was using what I had, but equally we've got a heavier wall, which just means that someday, in a few years' time, we're going to have a whole lot of fun moving this. So I'm going to do the same again down here. I didn't film, but I went in and counterbattened yesterday. So I've got 400 centres to match up with my stud work. You can see, because this has been exposed for nearly a year, it had been flapping around and stuff, but it's taut enough. There's loads of airflow. And of course, we want to make sure we keep that ventilation all the way up. Now, like the other end, I've pulled these in tight, so they're nailed, butted up together. But I expect these will probably open up to about 5mm, these gaps, if not a little bit more, as they dry and shrink. For that reason, on these ends, it almost seemed a little bit futile to put any insect mesh at the bottom, just because if there's going to be a gap, there's going to be a gap. But I'll hold out. I can always do it afterwards from underside, and up the top, the soffit boards will be small enough holes, small enough gap, there won't be an issue. Going back to our on-grid, off-grid topic for this video, which is, it's just one of those things that we're kind of talking through at the moment and researching into different things, and I'd really be interested to hear what your thoughts are on it. I think there's a sort of tendency to unnecessarily push for off-grid, and I see all these self-builds, cabins, everything going off-grid in very suburban areas, and I don't know, maybe I'm missing the point. I'm all for being self-sufficient, self-reliant, but if it makes no financial gain, if it doesn't really improve its green credentials, in that you can still have solar, still have a battery system, but staying connected to the grid shouldn't be necessarily a big negative. It's there should you need it, it's there as an alternative source. As more and more of the electric grid is renewable anyway, it's not like you're having to rely on fossil fuels, and there's different tariffs and all that sort of stuff anyway. I certainly think that if, as far as electric on or off grid, I'd rather stay on grid and just know it's there. The standing charge is minimal, and of course we'd potentially benefit from a feed-in, and which you wouldn't be able to do if you're off grid. And we get contacted almost on a daily basis from all these companies who do power banks, off grid power supply systems, and battery units, and they might be great in a camper van, but they push them towards this sort of thing, towards a cabin or an off-grid house, and they market them as an off-grid solution for a family house. Well, you look at them and they might be powerful enough to run appliances and things like that. But in reality, are you going to be able to coordinate your appliances and your induction hob and your washing machine and your tumble dryer and whatever it is so you don't overdo it? And the battery within it, one, you've got to charge it up. So you need a fairly decent solar array to keep it fueled, or you need to be on the grid to charge up the thing anyway. And I get it if you were doing an off-grid camper van and you had a small solar panel and you can charge it up in between. That's kind of what we did with the camper van. But in this situation, it just doesn't make sense. A lot of people were asking why we didn't go with solar and off-grid for this cabin. And because of that, the nature of it being a short-term house, and also we've got 3-phase power 20 meters away, it was a no-brainer. So as we move into next year and we look at how we're going to convert this into our house, we need to think about how the power is used, not necessarily where it comes from. I'd much rather put the emphasis onto reducing our heating input, our heating demand for it, and also power, the energy consumption of the building. So we're east to west here on our roof, but it's flat enough that hopefully that is still a sufficient orientation for PV. And at the moment, the design allows for it on the east side and a quarter on the west side. So I can't remember what it adds up to, and we'll be running some calculations soon anyway. So it's favourable for the solar. Like Joe said, we're going to be looking at a borehole. Next door, I've just done one. We don't have to go very deep at all here, and hopefully that will be able to feed into the house as well as the agricultural side. Ideally, both, but even if we stayed on the mains for the house and use a huge kind of system outside for the farm with a borehole, that could work. Otherwise, rainwater harvesting, something also we're going to be looking into because of the size of the roof and the other buildings, we can have a big underground reservoir. Right, that is me done on the gate. I'm going to sort of bang off that shuttering a little bit later, see if I can smooth it out. We know that the chickens can't get through, that's all good. We've just picked up a new pig. She's settling in a bit of an isolation area up here. Then she'll be joining the herd down there. I've got to move a load of pigs from down there elsewhere because someone's coming to cut some hedges tomorrow, and otherwise he's going to end up letting them loose. And then we need to move some electric fencing for the sheep, but I think that'll have to be on a different video for a different channel. It'd be good to get a bit of a conversation going, so if you've got any pointers on the whole off-grid, on-grid thing, then let me know, because you might be far more future thinking than me and thinking it's better to be completely independent of it, and things that we haven't thought about. But for our setup, for electric and water at least, or certainly just for electric, I'm thinking we stay on and then just use it as little as possible. But I might be missing something. Anyway, I'll leave it there. Thank you all for watching. Hopefully I'll get that cladding done for next time, but if you can, do it yourself. We'll see you next time.